So that kind of begs the question. So I think even Sean Hunwick would admit that this wasn't his best weekend. Red said it after the game Saturday. Wasn't not a good weekend for Honey, I guess you'd call him. I don't know. That'd be weird if he called him Honey. But speaking of Honey, Hoagie is just chilling there on the bench. There's a series this weekend, which means absolutely nothing except for the CCHA regular season titles on the line. But either way, Michigan's going to get that bye in the first round of the CCHA playoffs. Peter, should Brian Hogan get his first start since before the Big Chill?
You know what? Last weekend I would have said no, and the weekend before that I said yes. I'm back to saying yes. And the reason why is because the magic of Sean Hunwick is sort of over. Hunwick played amazing for like 4 or 5 weekends in a row, playing far beyond his abilities, and that was obvious. Okay. But in the end, he kind of lost that luster this weekend. It's time to see Brian Hogan. I hope to see him start Friday night, and either way, the team gets back into the groove as we go into the CCHA playoffs.
Now, but Mike, what happens if Hogan makes 50 saves and pitches a shutout, and then Hunwick, they win 4-3 or something the next night? What happens then?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a tough decision for Red Berenson. Hoagie, he's been there all through his 4 seasons here as a senior. Give him a chance. Obviously, Hunwick had this weekend, so I mean, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting.
Well, speaking of luster, as you were saying, Peter, some of the luster coming off of Sean Hunwick, perhaps, but an illustrious class of soon-to-be alums graduating here. Let's take a look at what the class of 2011 has done at Michigan. A 109, 45-9 overall record. That's almost 700 winning percentage. 57, 12, and 4 at Yost. Can you believe they only lost 12 times in 4 years at Yost? And that's really impressive. 2 CCHA tournament titles, 1 regular season title, that's 2008 year, 3 GLI titles, and of course the Frozen Four their freshman year. Peter, quick thoughts on this senior class?
Well, it's obvious. This senior class is amazing. Louis Caparuso, Carl Hagen, some of the best scorers in college hockey career-wise in the entire nation. But I'll also say another obvious thing. There's one thing missing on that resume. It's a national championship. And if they don't get one this April, it kind of comes at a wash. Their entire career, amazing as it is, they need to get a ring. It's that simple.
Well, certainly when you play for a Michigan football program or Michigan hockey program, which have both been wildly successful, winning 70% of your games, that's great. But when it comes down to it, it does come down to the rings, Mike. Mm-hmm. So does this class lose anything by not winning a national championship this year? Does some of their appeal diminish for you?
I mean, certainly, if you're going to come to University of Michigan, you expect to win. It's certainly a CCHA championship, which they've done, but, definitely a Frozen Four championship. They were there their freshman year, had that tough loss to Notre Dame in overtime, but, they've been playing some hot hockey lately. Look for this team to make certainly a run into the postseason, and, it's anybody's field out there right now.
All right, well, we need to go to commercial break, but coming back on the other side, we're going to talk about who worked overtime this past weekend. Stay tuned. Welcome back to WOLV Overtime. Alex Prasad, Mike Dermody.
The doctor.
The doctor. Peter Saul, of course, MD. Mike Dermody, that's doctor.
PS,
that's where we get it from.
Postscript,
right. ATP, energy, biology stuff. Anyway, we all have cool initials. Don't you feel left out? Let's take a look at who's working overtime. And I don't think this has ever happened before. But we have a sweep of sorts, anyhow. It's all Sweden, anyhow. Merrick and our co-producer, who's not here tonight, goes with Carl Hagelin, as do I. Obviously, he is the reason they won. But Peter refrains from choosing a player, but instead will go with a song. And that'd be the Swedish national anthem.
Clearly it inspired him pre-game Saturday night. What a beautiful anthem it is. The Kingdom of Sweden with their 3-crown jersey in their blue and yellow colors.
Yes.
That's about the extent of my knowledge.
I was just going to say, you're running
their
out.
Their capital is... it's in my head.
Stockholm.
And Peter Forsberg is from Sweden.
Right. Along with every other Red Wing besides the Russian ones. And Steve He's American. Anyway, so that's where we're going to go overtime this week. I don't know if there's any argument to be had for anybody else.
No.
Carl Hagelin saved the day on Saturday and single-handedly gave the team 3 points.
Yeah. Carl Hagen, certainly he's got to be happy he made this decision to, come all the way to America and play hockey at the University of Michigan. If there's anyone else you got to give it out there, I think you might have to consider Kevin Lynch. 3 goals and an assist on the weekend. He had an 18-game, scoring drought, as we mentioned, and coming off the 4th line, that's a nice production you can get on that, 4th line there with Kevin Lynch.
Well, let's take a look at what this sweep meant for Michigan. In fact, it meant nothing in terms of placing in the CCHA. They stay at second. They stay 1 point behind Notre Dame, who swept their opponent this past weekend. So they're sitting there, second place, 55 points. And if you look, there's there's going to be a lot of turnover here in these spots 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even potentially this next upcoming weekend. For Michigan, the only thing they could do is potentially jump Notre Dame. Miami's set in that number 3 spot. There's nothing that can happen to them there. So a lot of interesting things can happen. Notre Dame plays Western in a home-and-home this upcoming weekend. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But Michigan already ensured that first round CCHA bye, and therefore will be playing in 2 weeks, not just one. Let's take a look at what that meant for the bracketology, though, of the NCAA tournament, which is obviously the end game here. Michigan solidifies its spot as a 2 seed. They're actually a 2 seed last week as well, despite being 12th in pairwise, which is just a weird coincidence. Notre Dame a 3. Miami looks to be sneaking in at a 4 right now, and Western Michigan, after being swept by Michigan, on the outside looking in. It doesn't look like a 1 seed is potentially in the future of Michigan, Peter, but a 2 seed, especially a top 2 seed, as we were talking before the show, would mean a favorable geographic location.
Right, it's the difference between traveling to, say, Green Bay instead of Manchester, New Hampshire, Bridgeport, Connecticut, and playing against a team like Vermont or New Hampshire, teams that are expected to be a 3 seed that Michigan might face, and of course that would ruin any sort of higher seed advantage when you're essentially playing on road turf against these teams. Michigan definitely wants to go to the Midwest Regional in Green Bay. Potentially North Dakota would be the number 1 seed there, but beyond that, it looks like that path is set as long as they keep on their winning ways.
And Mike, you're a big Hockey East guy.
Oh yeah.
Hailing from Boston, so that home ice advantage can't be understated.
No, absolutely not. BC heads up to Manchester pretty much every year, and I mean, you see them in the Frozen Four pretty much every year. They've won 2 out of the last 3 Frozen Four championships, and I mean, they have one of the best squads in the country this year again. So, you really don't want to head up to Manchester and face a squad like Boston College. You'd rather stay locally and, maybe get some more Michigan fans to travel that shorter distance too.
We saw at Fort Wayne there would seem to be a lot of Michigan fans, at least even more than Miami, Ohio fans, it seemed like, in that second matchup.
Yeah, they just barely pulled it out. Of course, the interesting thing to see is bracketology coming down the stretch. Ohio State now officially above 500 for the season, but just barely teetering on the edge there. If they stay above 500, Michigan, has a high pairwise ranking. But if they drop below 500, Ohio State that is, then Michigan could see their pairwise ranking drop a bit and a corresponding drop in their seeding.
Right. The hockey.
We could go in the 8-minute spiel about how
teams under consideration.
Right. But the gist of it is one of the things that factors into your computer calculation, kind of like the BCS, is these teams under consideration that you play in your record against them. Mm-hmm. And if you're a team above 500, you are a team under consideration. So if Ohio State slips, Michigan beat Ohio State 3 out of 4 tries. Right. That 3-1 record slips off of Michigan's record, and then things get a little more difficult. We need to go to commercial break one more time. Coming back on the other side, we're going to talk about Michigan's upcoming series against the Northern Michigan Wildcats. Stay tuned. Welcome back to WOLV Overtime. Peter Saul, Mike Dermody, Alex Prasad, and we're going to welcome in now Adam Brewster. How's it going, Adam?
Hey guys, how are you? Good to be back.
Whoa.
Hey, buddy.
There you are.
Good to be back. Thanks for getting me in those highlights.
No problem. We're having fun in some of the breaks, picking on WCBN kids.
We saw your buddy play Scoro actually that night.
That's right.
Next night. Yeah.
The next night. That's right.
The next night. Anyway, Adam, tell us a little bit about this Northern Michigan team. They don't look to be very intimidating.
Not the most formidable opponent for Michigan. They're 14, 15, and 5 overall. 12, 11, and 3 in the CCHA. That's good for 5th place. 39.77. Ryan 31 points, 16 goals, 15 assists, and Floric 27 points, 13 goals, 27 assists, and he leads the team in shots.
I remember Floric being a guy that we were worried about last year when Michigan, of course, needed to beat Northern Michigan in the CCHA tournament finals.
Northern Michigan is a surprisingly chippy team, too. They have a very good, gritty team with also a bit of a scoring flair at the same time. So a good all-around team. They have been for a couple of years up there in Marquette.
Right, yeah, and if you take a look at some of the stats on Northern Michigan that Adam was touching on, one of the crazy things is, Northern Michigan, an average team win percentage-wise. I mean, look at that Wildcat. Are they yellow? Do they make yellow Wildcats up there in Northern Michigan? But
It's nice up there too.
It's like the one day they have above 50. 27th in pairwise, 10th in CCHA in scoring defense as well. But this is a team that plays about 500, Adam. So how are they doing this? I guess it must be the power play, second best in CCHA.
That power play is certainly killer. It's going to be key for Michigan. I mean, as it is every game, but especially this game, staying out of the box. Northern Michigan, strong power play. They convert about 19% of the time. However, they're not very good shorthanded. They've allowed 22% of the times they've been shorthanded. They have allowed goals. So if Michigan can capitalize on the most penalized team in the CCHA, that would be huge for them. As for the goaltending, usual starter Reed Ellingson, he's got 21 of their starts, .918 save percentage, 2.5 goals against. Not great numbers, not terrible numbers. And they also got freshman Jared Carew, who's 6'5", 200 pounds, similar to Brian Stewart.
No. Brian Stewart. Well, thanks, Adam, by the way. Thank you very much. Brian Stewart, the monster, who was a
huge,
seemingly 7'6", but Carew is actually bigger than Brian Stewart is. We looked that up because we have a little story about Brian Stewart.
Last year we were on the ice after the CCHA finals against Northern Michigan when Northern Michigan played the CCHA final, and Brian Stewart actually almost skated into Alex Prasad on the camera and killed him, but thankfully Alex Prasad ducked out of the way at the last second. Right. Brian Stewart actually played in the HL last season, so it looks like his hockey career is off to a good start.
When you're a big goalie and you're a big goalie.
The sumo goalie theory.
Right, the sumo goalie theory at work. I mean, same with Knapp, Miami Ohio's goalie. That's a big part of his appeal. So we don't have much time left, guys. Peter, what do you expect out of the Wolverines this weekend? And are we going to see a Hogan on a Friday, on a Saturday, on a no day?
Okay, well, I do think we're going to see Hogan on Friday night. At least I hope so. If not Friday, hopefully Saturday. So one night this weekend. Michigan, I feel they're going to have a pretty good series this week, although, of course, traveling up all the way to Marquette, not an easy distance. I'd say we see 4 or 5 points this weekend.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, agreed. Certainly a series that really doesn't mean too much. Michigan pretty much has their seed locked up in the CCHA tournament. They pretty much have a bid in the NCAA tournament. So I expect, like Peter said, to see maybe Hogan one of these nights. And Michigan's obviously the better team, so they'll get 4 or 5 points out of this weekend.
So 4 or 5 points seems to be the consensus here. Of course, if Notre Dame slips up, though, guys,
sure,
then that 1
nice
point,
another banner up there,
regular season championship,
right? Another banner, and
let's
be honest, a CCHA regular season banner, I think, means a lot more than a CCHA tournament banner. Right?
Yeah.
Right. You win 3 weekends in a row, or win a whole bunch of weekends.
Sure.
That's all the time we have this week on Overtime. We're going to take the next week off. It's spring break. We're all headed to the UP. No, just kidding. Adam Brewster is, though. We know that. Hopefully, 2 weeks from now, we'll be previewing an opponent in the CCHA playoffs that Michigan will steamroll. We'll see you then.